This is the Paltalk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online, a production of the Paltalk News Network. Paltalk, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you can post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not, and where you should be subscribing to my Twitter feed, twitter.com/GaryBaumgarten. Where you can see, read, and hear stories that you may not see, read, or hear in the mainstream media. Okay, you can just read them there. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. It's still under construction, but I also welcome you to read, and it's updated throughout the day, the Paltalk News Network website, which is appropriately paltalknewsnetwork.com. And I thank Boaz Frankel for doing such a great job developing the site for us. And I thank those of you who are contributing to the site as well. Speaking of the Paltalk News Network site, a lot of very interesting stories that we are covering today. A study by the Guttmacher Institute in London shows that unwanted pregnancies and abortions have declined worldwide, mainly due to contraception, and it finds that places that have tough anti-abortion laws, well, the number of unwanted pregnancies and abortions there have not declined. I guess saying just say no by law does not work. Maybe teaching people how to prevent unwanted pregnancies, education may work better. At least that's what this report suggests. There's a great story on the front page of the Paltalk News Network site today about a woman, now a woman, Jennifer Schuett, Schuett. 19 years ago, when she was in the second grade, an 8-year-old, she was sexually assaulted and left for dead. 19 years later, they have, through DNA, captured her alleged assailant. And she's a remarkable woman. She's been fighting for the capture of this guy all of her adult life. And she was there at the news conference today where they announced his arrest. And here's the interesting thing. Her throat was slit from ear to ear by her assailant. They didn't think she'd ever talk again. And from her hospital bed, as an 8-year-old girl, she gave police a description of the man. You got to go to paltalknewsnetwork.com and look at his driver's license then and the police artist's rendition of what he looked like based on her description. It's uncanny how accurate this little second grader was. In spite of the fact of her, she was traumatized and left for dead like that. He's been caught, her alleged assailant, thanks to DNA. Today, the United States Senate committee voted to approve a health reform bill. It was strictly along partisan lines, 14-9, with Democrats voting yes, Republicans voting nay, with the exception of Olympia Snowe, a Republican of Maine, who voted yes. So it moves out of committee and to the U.S. Senate as a whole. There's a wonderful story in there today about the invasion of the giant snakes. Somebody has introduced these giant snakes, which are native to South America and Africa, to South Florida. And some of these snakes will eat you, although humans are not their normal fare. But I imagine if they're hungry enough. I mean, some of these snakes are more than 20 feet long and weigh more than 200 pounds. That's right. They're actually bigger and heavier than Boaz Frankel. So maybe you would be a tasty morsel for them. And in Africa, their native environs, they are known to have attacked and eaten humans. And the problem is that the mammals and the birds of South Florida are not familiar with these um, non-native snakes and may not know how to defend themselves or stay away from them. Could affect the ecological balance of the United States, especially if they reproduce in large numbers. Pakistan today launched an air assault against Taliban strongholds on the Afghan border, near the Afghan border, after four major terrorist attacks by the Taliban in the past week, including a very embarrassing takeover of a building on the Pakistan Army headquarters base that special forces had to recapture because they had 22 hostages held there. They were all released. Rush Limbaugh, the conservative radio talk show host, is attempting to buy the St. Louis Rams. Who has come out of the woodwork in opposition? Reverend Al Sharpton, who calls Limbaugh a divisive and anti-NFL, accuses him of being divisive and anti-NFL on several occasions, with comments about NFL players, including Michael Vick and Donovan McNabb. I don't know. I'm not a big supporter of Rush Limbaugh, but what's the problem? Because he criticized two guys who happen to be black, that makes him a racist? You can say a lot of things about Rush Limbaugh, but I don't think he's a racist, as apparently Al Sharpton is suggesting. If anybody has shown racist tendencies, it was Al Sharpton over the Tawana Brawley hoax, but I guess that's different. Anyways, that story is there, www.paltalknewsnetwork.com. Another one from today. I mean, we've just been busy as can be grabbing stories for you guys. The New York Times, of all institutions, has ordered a cancellation of newspaper subscriptions. They can't afford the newspaper subscriptions any longer. So as they fight for circulation, they contribute to the decline of circulation of their competitors. Hillary Clinton is in Russia trying to get the Russians to approve sanctions, or at least the threat of sanctions against the Iranians, and the Russians say that would be counterproductive. So I suggest that that leaves only a military option, and that military option would be extrajudicial, given the fact that Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. If they're not going to support merely the threat of sanctions, they are clearly not going to support a military action against Iran should Iran not, as they have promised, open those nuclear facilities to the invasive and unfettered access of the IAEA inspectors. So that means either the United States or the Israelis will have to go it alone without the United Nations approval to save the rest of the